Case 47. Aziz versus Air India. We find ourselves in the U.S. District Court for the Central District of California. Facts. On June 27, 2007, Ramazan Aziz was a passenger on board Air India Flight 137 from Frankfurt, Germany to Los Angeles, California, traveling on a round-trip ticket on Air India originating in Los Angeles. After landing at Los Angeles International Airport, and while the airplane was still in the process of taxiing to the gate, a passenger seated next to Aziz noticed that he had collapsed and was not breathing. The passenger called the flight attendant and alerted her to Aziz's condition. Another passenger seated nearby reported to the flight attendant that an hour earlier she had spoken to Aziz, and that after that conversation, the passenger presumed Aziz had fallen asleep. When Air India Flight 137's flight crew was alerted to Aziz's condition, the flight attendant immediately summoned an onboard doctor, a passenger who identified himself as Dr. Gautam Mittal, and then notified the IFS and the plane's captain. Dr. Mittal examined Aziz and took his vital signs. Dr. Mittal found that Aziz was not breathing, did not have a pulse, and was very pale. And As Dr. Mittal was treating Aziz, the flight crew contacted the airport for paramedics and requested that they respond to the aircraft at the arrival gates. The flight crew initially provided Dr. Mittal with a stethoscope and a blood pressure apparatus. Later, a flight attendant also brought him an oxygen mask and tank. Dr. Mittal had another passenger standing nearby administer oxygen to Aziz while the doctor performed CPR. At no time did Dr. Mittal ask the flight crew for a defibrillator or any other equipment or medicine. Paramedics boarded the aircraft after it arrived at the gate 15 minutes later, and the door was opened. Upon entering the aircraft, they spotted Aziz lying in his seat, and for reasons never explained, unattended and with no medical services being provided by anyone. Although the paramedics found that Aziz was not breathing and had no pulse, they noticed that he was not yet asystolic, no heart contractions, and their EKG monitor initially showed that he did emulate ventricular fibrillation waves. The paramedics attempted CPR and employed an AED to administer a defibrillation shock on Aziz. Thereafter, the monitor showed that Aziz became asystolic. Epinephrine and atropine were administered intravenously, at which point Aziz's heart temporarily resumed ventricular fibrillation waves on the monitor. Continuing attempts to revive Aziz's heart were unsuccessful, and Aziz thereafter remained asystolic. Aziz was pronounced dead on board the airplane at 5:45 p.m. No autopsy of Aziz's body was performed. Aziz's wife and his 4 children eventually filed suit against Air India, alleging a state law tort claim of wrongful death, based on the contention that if the aircraft was equipped with an AED, Aziz would have survived. The issue. The question before the court is whether the airline's failure to have on board an automated external defibrillator AED renders it liable for the passenger's death under international law as established by treaty. Holding. The court held that under the law governing this case, the aircraft is not required to have such a device in place, and therefore awards summary judgment in favor of the airline. Reasoning. The court denied the Aziz family's motion for summary judgments and granted Air India's motion for summary judgment, finding that Aziz's death on board Flight 137 was neither an event nor an unusual or unexpected occurrence in light of the lack of evidence on industry standards regarding AED, and the affirmative proof by Air India that provision of such AED devices was neither requested by Dr. Mittal nor was it required by governmental or international regulatory agencies at the relevant time for international flights.